Hey, Champion Nation. Welcome to the Champion Nation podcast.
I'm married to a wonderful man. And one of the things I realized when we first got together was that I wanted to be loved so badly, right? And I feel loved. But what I didn't realize until we got together was I wanted my love to be received. And that's just as much of a gift as it is to be loved. And I married someone.
Stay there.
Yeah.
Keep talking about that. I like that.
Yeah. So I married someone who received my love and wanted my love. And it was just as important to me as being loved. And it's a part of being loved. And, am I totally healed? Do I ever have a blind spot? Of course I do. We're human. We're fallible. We're not like ascended masters. We're learning. We're growing.
What's up, Champion Nation? How are you doing? I hope all is well. I hope you are having a champion week. I don't know if you're listening to it tomorrow, you're listening to it the next day, 2 months from now, 6 years from now. It doesn't matter. I just hope that you are having a champion week. I am excited today. I am super excited today to have Phyllis Leavitt. Did I say it right, Phyllis?
You did.
I try so hard to say, I don't want to butcher the last name. But we have Phyllis on with us. Phyllis is an author of quite a few books. She's also a psychotherapist, which I cannot wait to hear about that part. If my wife was here right now, she would be eating this up. She loves this stuff. So psychotherapist, that Phyllis is, and also she's a speaker. She is a speaker. She speaks from the heart. She speaks from the mind, but not just from the mind. She also speaks from the heart. Phyllis, thank you so much for joining the Champion Nation. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me here today. It's just really exciting to talk with you.
Absolutely. And you said it's around, 8 o'clock right now in New Mexico?
It is.
So
it's
you
bright
are
and early.
Absolutely. So you really have to be dedicated to the cause to be up this early.
Right.
So Phyllis, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Okay. Well, I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years. And like so many people in their profession, my desire to become a psychotherapist came out of having a really good experience of being a client in psychotherapy. And my children were really little, and I was looking to see what, career path I wanted to take. And that's what I chose. And, I've worked with individuals and couples and children and families. And, out of that experience and my own experience doing my own therapy about my own childhood traumas, I came to see how much abuse and neglect and dysfunction is happening in families in America. And out of that, it just became really clear to me that this kind of abuse and neglect and dysfunction is happening all over the world. And not just within families, but societally, from discrimination, from poverty, from prejudice, from war, from lack of accessibility of needed resources. That there are people that are being hurt and traumatized, and therefore becoming symptomatic in America and all over the world, just like I was symptomatic. And because that's what we see, sort of like if the body's injured, we get symptoms that tell us do something to heal, and our psyches are the same way. So that led to me really, I'll try to make this really succinct and hopefully
the floor is yours. Talk.
Okay. And so out of that, just looking at family systems, which is a really important part of psychotherapy. We're not islands. We're conditioned by our family situation, by the role models of behavior, the expectations we have, the things we learn about men and women, the things we learn about parenting, the things we learn about right and wrong, and the things we learn about love, and the things we learn about caring and about cooperation. And one thing that I think is very important that we all learn in some way from our families is how conflict is dealt with. Is it dealt with
Mm.
peacefully? Is it dealt with respect? Is it dealt with a desire to work it out? Or is it dealt with somebody dominates and the other people have to submit? And so looking at all these family dynamics, it became really clear to me that our country also operates like a family. And our dynamics as a country with leaders at the top, like parents sort of control a family, and the citizenry, like all the people in the family, we either operate on healthy family dynamics or we don't. And to some extent we do. And to many extents we don't. And what I saw was that many of the policies and practices that come down from the top in our country create an environment that's not unlike a dysfunctional or neglectful or abusive family, with the same effect on thousands and millions of us that dysfunctional and abusive parents have on their families. And I just felt like I needed to write about that because I see our country being in crisis. I see, when parents fight continually in a family, their children are deeply affected as well
Absolutely.
as themselves. And we have people in positions of leadership who seem to be committed to fighting rather than cooperation, rather than working it out, rather than respectfully listening to an alternative point of view. And I think it's affecting all Americans. And I hear that. And I'll end this little part with one thing that I share often, which is I've been a therapist for many, many years. And it was not until the 2016 election that I ever had a client come to therapy traumatized by the politics in our country. I had people coming in and saying they can't sleep at night and they're really afraid for their children and they're afraid of what's happening to America and what road are we going down. And so, what I see is that psychotherapy, and I have so much to say because I wrote a whole book, right? So, that psychotherapy and psychology not only have a very clear lens, I think, on the dynamics of what's happening in our country, but it offers solutions that we're not using. Psychotherapy and psychology are not partisan. They're not invested in anybody winning the game. Psychology is invested in healing relationship. It's invested in healing the relationship with ourselves. And if it's like a couple or a family that comes to therapy, the investment and the goal is to bring reconnection and peace and peaceful cooperation and honoring and care. And so I feel like the lens of psychology and psychotherapy is desperately needed in our country today. And that's the other half of why I wrote my book, America in Therapy.
Thank you for sharing that wealth of information in only 7 minutes.
I was hoping it would be shorter.
Thank you so much. But you touched on so many different points. But the thing that you touched on the most that I really, really want to focus on is how conflict is dealt with.
That's right.
But here's the deal, Phyllis. You talked about America on this macro, from this macro standpoint. And if you don't mind, I want to bring it down.
Yeah.
I want to get real granular with this point. When we talk about how to deal with conflict, normally we're talking about from one individual to another, right? For the most part, right?
Right.
But being that you've been in psychotherapy for over 3 decades, what about the conflict that we deal with within ourselves? Let's say,
absolutely.
or let me just give you an example. What I mean by this: hey, I have a goal. I have a goal to write a book, and I'm giving myself 2 years to write the book. 2 years pass, I don't write the book. It's 3-4 years. Now I'm angry with myself. I'm beating myself up. How? Please touch on that.
Well, I think what you're bringing up, first of all, it's crucial because our relationship with ourselves is everything. Our relationship with ourselves is part of how what conditions how we relate to other people and the world. If I internalized very positive messages about myself from my family, you're loved, your gifts are wanted, we value you, we respect your opinion even if we don't agree with it. If I receive that in my family, it's very likely that I've internalized really positive messages about who I am and who I am in the world. And I'm going to bring that to my relationships with other people, because we really internalize the role models and the behaviors and the experiences that we have growing up. And so if those role models and those experiences are injurious and what I've internalized from my family, and I'm going to include my larger environment because we're all part of school systems and sometimes places of worship,
Correct.
economic systems, what's happening in our social life, especially work and family and friends and community. That's all part of the family system. If I receive messages that I'm not wanted, that I'm ugly, that I'm stupid, that I'm not valuable, that I'm not lovable, that my life is not worth saving, that I'm only good for what I can produce for another person, or, that kind of thing, then that's what I've internalized. And there are hundreds of thousands of people internalizing those kinds of messages in their homes and in our society today. And we have to know that they're going to be symptomatic. And so that's part of what I talk about is what are the symptoms for people when they're not treated well by other human beings. And I say this over and over again: love and belonging and cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution are the best foods for human beings. And when they're not fed that, they're symptomatic, like if we ate poison food.
And I love that, because while you were speaking, once again, you're touching on so many great points. I was thinking about, we talking about America, you talking about all over the world, but then at the same time, there are, cultures, then subcultures and subcultures, and, so many different things, and how, maybe African Americans handle conflict versus, how whites handle conflicts and Hispanics. But basically what you're saying is love. That's universal, right?
Right.
The four things, I believe you named 4 or 5 things, they're universal.
Yeah. And there's more on that list, but those are some key ones of every baby is born needing to be loved and cared for and accepted and nurtured and safe and provided for. And, I had this experience, and we've probably all had this experience. The other day I was standing in line at the grocery store, and there was a woman behind me holding, maybe a 4 or 5 month old baby. And he was looking at me. And I looked back at him, and he just was looking at me so intensely, just with this, his gaze was fixated on my eyes. And I smiled at him, and he immediately smiled.
Of course.
And I said, "Oh, look at you, you beautiful boy." And he just beamed. He was, and he was fixated, and we just had this little exchange for a moment while we were in line. And that's us. We all want that. We all light up when someone sees us and loves us and cares for us and, and gives that kind of vibration toward us. And when we don't, we experience the opposite.
Yes. Phyllis, how did you feel once you gave that compliment, and then he gave you that smile back? How did it make you feel?
Oh, it made me feel fantastic. And then his mom started smiling, and we were, all three of us were in it together. It was amazing. It gave me as much love as I felt like I was giving out.
Like I said, I wish my wife was actually the host of this particular episode, not me, because y'all be talking for 3-4 hours. But awareness, that is a big deal. Today is the 3rd of December. My mother died November 30th, 2017. So a few days ago, made 6 years. Years. And I am 40. They say, what is it? Time heals all wounds. And I would debate that. I don't think so. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. And a good friend of mine, he said, "Hey, Sean, if you're grieving, don't rush it. Don't
That's
rush
right.
it. If
That's
it
right.
takes you 20 years to grieve, grieve. But become aware that you're grieving." Can you touch on
Mm-hmm.
awareness and how
Mm-hmm.
that right there is important on how we interact with each other?
Yeah. Well, I think awareness in some ways is everything. And I could probably say that about 10 different words. But awareness is the key to change. If you can't be aware of something, then it's really hard to get your hands around it and change it. So awareness is a beginning place. And what I would say is that for so many people who are either grieving a loss like you're talking about, or there's a grief process that is unending because of trauma in their childhood or in their life now, ways that they're being hurt and that they have not had a chance to heal. I think you're right. The hurt doesn't go away. And awareness is a doorway into, I would say, change, but I think it's also a doorway into getting help. I think we need each other to heal. You probably need to
Mm.
talk about your mom with other people and have your grief be heard and have your feelings be acknowledged. And we need each other to heal. There are people, of course, who can white knuckle it and they somehow pull themselves up from the wreckage and they go on to lead amazing lives. But many people don't. Many people don't heal well, and their grief or their trauma or their pain or their dysfunction stays alive and it conditions their lives. They act out on the people that they love, or they act out societally, or they withdraw, or, or, or they look good on the outside, but they're suffering on the inside.
Mm.
Or they're, and this I think is something that I've also seen a lot, in addition to the things I just mentioned, is that their true creativity, their true gift that they have to give in the world, whether it's just being a more loving parent, I shouldn't say just, being a more loving parent and a more loving partner, or they're going to, clean the water up on the whole planet, whatever the scope is of the gift we want to give from our true self-expression, often is really muted by abuse and neglect and just, trying to survive. Our energy is about trying to survive rather than thriving and really offering our fullest gifts to the world. And that's one of the big reasons why we should care about each other, why we should treat each other differently, because we each actually have something incredible to offer.
Yes. Yes. Yesterday, my wife did, well, it wasn't just my wife, my son, our son, a 9-year-old son, and myself. We volunteered for the Salvation Army, ringing the bell.
Oh, sweet, sweet. So sweet.
We
Yeah.
did that. We did it last year in December. And God, it was so cold. We did it yesterday here in Atlanta, which wasn't that bad. But then we're doing it again in December 22nd at 8 p.m. And I looked at my wife. I said, "Babe, so you
Wow.
decided to pick the coldest day of the year at night." So, but
Bundle up.
yeah. But we were standing outside of a Kroger, Phyllis, and we were just dingling that bell. And when I left, I still heard the bell, but we were dingling the bell and saying, "Happy holidays, Merry Christmas." The smiles
Right.
from it didn't matter the culture, the
That's right.
smiles. So with that being said, I was given smiles, but I'm sure I have blind spots, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was given that smile. So is it possible that you can still have blind spots, still go through, still be wearing or still wear the traumatic experience, but still offer love to other people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when people say you can't really love each other, until you love yourself,
I've heard that.
it's not entirely true. I don't think it's entirely true. I think we can love each other and we can learn to love each other better the more we heal. But I think what you brought up is something that I found when I'm married for the second time, and I'm married to a wonderful man. And one of the things I realized when we first got together was that I wanted to be loved so badly, right?
Mm,
And I feel loved. But what I didn't realize until we got together was I wanted my love to be received. And that's just as much of a gift as it is to be loved. And I
Stay there,
married
stay there,
someone.
stay there,
Yeah.
stay there, stay there. Keep
Yeah.
talking about that. I like that.
Yeah. So I married someone who received my love and wanted my love. And it was just as important to me as being loved. And it's a part of being loved. And, am I totally healed? Do I ever have a blind spot? Of course I do. We're human. We're fallible. We're not like ascended masters. We're learning, we're growing. And we do that best with other people. And we do it best with other people that we are allowed to love and who love us. So yeah, we can have blind spots. And in the best relationship, those blind spots get reflected back to you in a way that's not assaultive, that's not injurious, that's still with love. There's a wonderful couples therapist named Terry Real, and one of the things he talks about is telling the truth to each other with love.
Mm.
And that's what we need in our country. We need to be able to address violence, without emotional violence, without mental violence, without physical violence. There are wrongs. There are terrible things being perpetrated in our country, but violence is never the answer, whether it's verbal or whatever. It's not the answer. We have to come to it from a place of, I care about you. I don't like what you're doing. What you're doing is harmful, but I still care about you.
And you're right. And I believe we can get there. We can.
I do too.
We can move the needle with people like yourself, and your husband and your family and your friends. We can get there. And my wife. The thing is, it really starts at home, Phyllis.
That's right.
It really does. And you said something that I really wanted you to hone in on. You said it was important for you to receive love, to feel loved, but it was just as important for your love to be received.
That's right.
Can you please touch on why that was so important for you?
Well, I think that's our very nature. I think we're born loving beings. And I think it's the way we most profoundly connect with other human beings is through love. And so if my love isn't received, then I'm not received on some level. And when I'm not received, I'm going to develop defenses. And what do our defenses look like? And we come by them honestly, because there are many people, and I'll just talk about America, in this country today who are not loved, who are not treated well, and they develop defenses. Those are their symptoms. They become aggressive. They withdraw. They become addicts. They, act out in society. They fail at school. They bully other kids on the playground, or they're the one who is bullied and they don't know how to stand up for themselves. We become symptomatic when we're not fed good emotional food, when we're not safe, and when we don't have really adult models of conflict resolution.
While you were speaking, I thought about this quote. It does take a village. Obviously,
it takes a village.
It takes a village, but one person can make a difference. And I thought about this quote. I don't remember who said it. I don't even know if it's a proverb or anything like that. But they said, if you don't think one person can make a difference, try sleeping in the bed with a mosquito. Sleeping in the bed with a mosquito. Right. One mosquito can ruin your entire night of sleep.
Right.
So you said we need each other to... Go ahead.
Right. No, I was just going to agree with you. One person can make a difference, and we can each be that person.
Yes.
And I think that's where the hope for America lies, because I think a lot of people feel hopeless. A lot of people feel like they can't make a difference. And I'm here to say we can make a difference. Smiling at that baby made a difference for me. In that moment, I think it made a difference for his mom and him. We can all make a difference.
You said we need each other to heal. And in what ways? Because as a society, I don't think we want to be that vulnerable.
I think that's part of the problem. I think we have a society today that really has elevated the idea of independence and I can make it on my own and I don't need anybody, to a place that's really unhealthy for us because it's just simply not true. First of all, as a fact, it's not true. I couldn't be here talking to you without all of the people that created computer technology, all of the energy systems that power it, in my warm house. We need each other for every single thing, practically every single thing that keeps
Absolutely.
us alive today. And we have to know that. We depend, and if the people that we depend on are not mentally healthy, then we're going to be at the effects of their ill health. And we can all do something about that. Go ahead.
So when you say do something about it, that was going to be my next question. What steps could we take to escape from that whole independent, I could do this bad by myself? Right. What steps can we take to become more community so we can be vulnerable and heal each other?
Well, there's probably 50 answers to that question of roads I could go down. But one thing I want to share with you is that as a therapist, I've often had people come to me just talking about the issue of vulnerability because it's a very important issue. I've had people come to therapy saying, I don't want to be needy. Or they'll say, my husband doesn't or my wife doesn't want to come to therapy with me because they don't want to need help. Mm-hmm. And I think to myself, and I always say the same thing, why not? If your computer breaks, you don't mind needing the computer technician. If your car breaks down, you don't mind going to an auto mechanic. If your heart's failing, you don't mind going to the hospital. So why for your mental health and well-being, all of a sudden, is it taboo to need help? I feel like we have to start sharing with each other that it's actually a strength to ask for help and come out of your own defensive bubble and your shutdown or your rage or whatever is bothering you and actually turn to someone who could help you, because inside of us all is a vulnerable human being. And to the extent that our defenses have created walls around that to protect us, and that's why we created the defenses, was to protect ourselves.
Right.
It's letting them down with safe people. And it has to be with safe people. We need safe people to heal. People who won't judge us, people who are listening, people who value what we have to say, people who don't stand in judgment if we reveal something about ourselves that we're ashamed of. Because we all have things that we're ashamed of. We all do. We've all hurt other people. We like to talk about how we've been hurt, and it's important to talk about how we've been hurt. But invariably, we've hurt others.
Right.
And can we take responsibility for that without feeling like we're the worst person on the earth? Because we're not. We're human.
What about taking responsibility? And, that's a big part of healing as well. Taking responsibility. Should we? It's so interesting how human beings are. When we succeed at something, we own it. When we don't succeed, we sort of just deter it.
Right.
It was because of the lighting. It was this, it was that. How magnificent would it be, Phyllis, if we not only own our successes, but also own the responsibility when things don't go right? How powerful would that be?
100%. And one of the later chapters in my book, I talk about some of the elements of repairing human relationships. And the first one is restraining ourselves from any violent or aggressive impulses. If I'm going to sit down with you and try to work something out with you, I have to restrain myself from calling you names or banging on the table or, obviously being physically aggressive. That's part of safety. One of the next key elements is taking responsibility. We all have something that we can do differently, that we can take responsibility for. And I say this all the time. If you've ever had the experience where someone genuinely apologized to you and said, I was really wrong, or I said something hurtful to you, and I'm really sorry. How can I make that up to you? You know that feels amazing when it's sincere and genuine, and it's healing. When we take responsibility for ourselves in a relationship, and let me just say, it's hard. I think it's a very hard thing for many people to do. I know it can be hard for me with my husband. If, we're upset with each other, I think he's wrong and he thinks I'm wrong. And
Right.
we try to convince each other that the other person is wrong, right? Right.
Absolutely.
And that's a stalemate, and we love each other enough that we will come back from that and look at ourselves. It may be a bumpy ride, but we're committed to doing that. And that's what I want to see in America. That's what I want to see in the family of America, that we can actually take responsibility for ourselves as communities for how we treat all our citizens,
Yes.
as states, and as a federal government. How do we treat all our citizens? And when we have mistreated people, can we own that and do it differently?
Yes.
So one of the next steps after taking responsibility is making amends. I say rehabilitating ourselves. If I've done something wrong or, I've mistreated you in some way, then the best thing I can do is do it differently now. That's the best thing I can do. And that's the most healing thing for me, because then I'm not acting out and putting that on myself. And that's the best thing I can do for you. And what if we took that on as a value in our country, historically, as well as in the present? What if we really acknowledged as a country what we did to Native Americans and to Black people who came over as slaves, and to what we still do to those populations, what we still do to all kinds of marginalized populations in this country, to women, to children? What if we actually stood up and said, this isn't okay? Because first of all, because it's not okay to hurt another human being.
It is
and
not.
Second of all, because we are all at the effects of the harm we do.
Hope.
Yeah.
Hope. It sounds like you a hope dealer.
I'd like to be.
And everything that you're talking about and the different points and we touched on, identifying blind spots, how to deal with conflict. We need each other to heal, being an example, being exercising restraint. It sounds like all of that is leading to hope.
Yeah.
Is that what your life has been called to do?
Well, I think that's why I wrote my book, because I really feel like there are gold nuggets in the world of psychology and psychotherapy that we're not using. It's sort of like if you knew, a cure for COVID, but you didn't tell anybody. Like, that would be weird.
It would be.
Right?
It would be.
That'd be weird. And I feel like we have so many elements for healing ourselves and our society, and they go together. One person doing healing work for themselves, changing their behavior, becoming more aware, like you're saying, role modeling something different for their children, makes a difference in their world. We can. And if we have people in positions of power who role model the same things, who are committed to bringing people back together rather than fueling divisiveness, who are committed to peaceful conflict resolution rather than perpetuating war. And we know, we probably don't even know the full extent, but what we know from the news about the wars going on in the world today, and there are wars going on in this country. They're not the same as the war in Gaza, but there are wars of people pitted against each other in this country. The fallout is actually on all of us.
It is. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if when I was in a theater last night at a concert, and I had this flash of what would it be like to be in a theater with a mass shooter? We don't know if we're safe unless we make it safe for all of us.
I appreciate you sharing that. Healing the nation can be a monumental task. From your perspective, what are some of the actionable steps that individuals and communities can take to contribute the healing process you advocate for America
Right.
in therapy?
Yeah. I mean, the first actionable step is to make the changes that are needed, get the healing that we need in our own lives, because we're more able to be of service to others on a larger level if we've done some healing work ourselves and we embody if we embody the principles that I'm talking about, that we love and we care and we're committed to peace. And then I think each in our own way, for me, it's speaking out with my book, and it's speaking out with speaking. I think a big element is education. I learned all this stuff by being a therapist, by being a mother, by being a wife, by going to graduate school, by working with hundreds of people all over many years. I learned these things. And so we have to offer that learning to people in our own way. You're offering it by what you're doing. You have all kinds of people with different angles on what makes a difference coming to your show. And you offer that to your thousands of listeners. So offering our best, and it doesn't matter what scale it's on. And then for me, I feel like try to vote for people who embody some of these principles. Share some of this with people that, have authority, whether it's in your place of work or in your place of worship or in your home or in your circle of friends or with larger governmental institutions and institutions of power. I think we need to speak out, but each person does it in their own way.
Yes.
You won't do it the way I do it. I won't do it the way you do it. And that's part of the blessing of diversity. Could we celebrate that we each have a different gift to offer?
Yes. And the thing is, it is such an old truth is just treat people the way you want to be treated.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it is the bottom line. But I think the question is, do people really know how they want to be treated, Phyllis? What do you think about that?
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're right. I think that our conditioning can be so dysfunctional and so abusive that people don't know that they actually just really want to be loved and safe. I think that's true. I think at the far end of the continuum of abuse and neglect and violence, people don't know that. And we see that. I read this very, very sad little clip in an article in the New York Times that was when the war in Gaza first started. And a reporter there had talked to a woman from Gaza who was not living in Gaza at the time. But she said, people are so desperate. Life in Gaza is so horrible that becoming a martyr seems like the only option for any kind of honor.
Oh, wow.
And it broke my heart. It broke my heart. And I think that we can treat people badly enough that they don't see any other option for themselves. I think we have to ask ourselves, what makes people terrorists? They're not born terrorists. How do they get there? What conditioning do they get? And how could we individually in our own lives and as a society change that conditioning so no one would want to be a martyr or a terrorist? Just like in a family, how could a family become healthy that one of the kids doesn't go out and shoot up a school?
Yes. Or do something to themselves. Absolutely. Looking ahead, how do you envision the role of psychotherapists and mental health professionals in shaping the future societal well-being, particularly in the context of your focus of Healing America?
Yeah, I think, the original title for my book was Out of the Office and Into the World. And the idea was to just take everything I've learned and everything we know in the world of psychology and psychotherapy, because I'm not alone, and bring it into the world. And I see that as our mental health. Actually, this is how I see it. And I say this in the beginning of my book because it's really part of the deepest motivation for what I did in writing it. And that is that our mental health is actually the biggest threat to our continued existence here on Earth. If we don't become mentally healthy, we are at great risk of unleashing the weapons of mass destruction that we've created. Mentally healthy people don't shoot up schools. Mentally healthy people don't drop nuclear weapons on other people. They don't. And so we have to look to our mental health and turn to our professionals And we have a long way to go
Yes.
because right now, a lot of mental health professionals have been silenced when they talk about the mental ill health of some of the people in office. They've been silenced, they've been shamed, they've been ignored, and this is a really serious consideration.
Thank you for sharing that. The time is drawing to, and I have enjoyed this conversation. Have you?
I have totally loved it.
Let me ask you, Phyllis, this last question. In everything that you shared, you're an author, psychotherapist, speaker, so many nuggets. You've written several books. You had the opportunity to help and guide hundreds and hundreds of people throughout your over 3 decades of your practice. What does it mean to you, in your own words? What does it mean to you to be a champion?
That's a beautiful question. I think one of the greatest gifts that I've ever received was to have someone see me and value me. And I didn't really feel that growing up. And I remember very clearly the first person that I felt seen by. I was in my 20s. And that triggered something in me that helped me. I think my quest to be my own champion, to be like my greatest self, to unlock my own potential, I think that was always there. But I needed to be seen in some way outside of myself to really begin to unlock that process. I think we're all champions. I think we all have a gift. And we need to express it in the world and hopefully have it be received somewhere. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but what I want to say is that in the world of psychology, we know that champion is inside each person.
Yes.
And whether they can see it or not, whether they feel it or not, whether they've even had an experience of it or not, we hold the light for that.
Yes.
That is there. And when you've peeled back the layers of the hurt conditioning that you've gotten, you will find that. And I had a client who drew that once. This person was probably one of the most abused individuals I've ever met. And somewhere along the line in his therapy, he drew a picture that circled down into his essence. And drawing that picture was the first time he saw that it was there himself. It was so beautiful, I cannot tell you. And we can do that for each other.
Absolutely. We can point out and extract the champion within each other. Phyllis,
Right.
This has been a warm conversation. Thank you so much. Where could our visitors, not visitors, our visitors, where could our visitors, listeners, and viewers, where could they connect with you?
Yeah, please go to my website. It's www.phyllisleavitt.com. And I'll just spell it because you can spell Phyllis and Leavitt so many different ways. It's PhyllisLeavitt. And you can contact me on my website. You can pre-order my book on my website. My book is coming out next year. And you can read, about me. And most of what's on my website right now is about my newest book. But you can read a little bit about my other books as well. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and LinkedIn is a really great place to connect, and Twitter. And I've started using Substack a little bit to write articles. I have lots of podcasts uploaded on YouTube and on my website, and blogs and just all kinds of stuff. And I'm really just happy to share with anyone. So please contact me, and I'd be more than happy to reach out and respond to whatever anyone's need is.
That is so beautiful and so splendid. Phyllis, thank you so much. Champion Nation, this has been a thought-provoking conversation. And, this is not our rah-rah motivational type conversation. This is really a reflective conversation. Look within. In order to heal America, which is great because this is where we live. But I know some of our viewers and listeners, you live in other parts of the world. But to heal the world,
right?
Let's get granular. It starts with ourselves. It starts with how we deal with conflicts. It starts with identifying our blind spots and becoming aware. But what I really heard Phyllis say, it starts with love.
It does.
It starts with you loving yourself. It starts with you loving your neighbor. It doesn't matter the color. None of that stuff matters. It doesn't. It's minutia. It doesn't matter. Give a smile like Phyllis did with that baby and give some love. Champion Nation, don't forget to love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Champion Nation, have a champion week. Phyllis, thank you once again. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.